Hello everyone, it's Emma and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about overtourism again. I did my first video on overtourism when we went up to Takayama, Japan. In that video I talked about what overtourism is and how we can combat that as tourists and consumers ourselves. And of course, the number one way to combat overtourism is to just not go to over-touristy areas. It's quite literally that simple. But today I'm going to be talking about more how overtourism has a direct impact on the environment. We love to minimize our impact when traveling because, as we know, the tourism industry and traveling in general aren't the greatest for the planet. One of the worst. That's why we still like to get out and see the world. We just like to do it with as small of impact as possible. So I was inspired to make this video when we went to Ishigaki just a couple weeks ago. It's only 250 miles away from the Okinawa mainland. It's still in the region of Okinawa, Japan. But when I was looking up pictures and things to do, I noticed the water is so much clearer. The water is so much more blue. There's more fish, there's more corals. The corals are actually more colorful. There's more mountains, there's more lushness. And it got me thinking, how is overtourism really affecting the planet? I was sure there might be a scientific explanation for it, but my first thought went to overtourism. Okinawa sees 6.6 million tourists per year, not including the over 1 million people who live here, while the entire Yaeyama Island chain of 23 islands sees just 1 million tourists. And the Yaeyama Islands is where Ishigaki sits. There's 23 islands in that area. All 23 of those islands see 1 million tourists per year. So those 5 million more tourists that Okinawa Honto, the main island, sees contribute significantly to air pollution, physical pollution, water pollution, and all sorts of pollution across the board. It's more air pollution from extra cars, extra buses, extra planes, extra trains, all of the extra transportation that has to go on here on this island because of all the tourists and of course all the people who live here, really contributes to air pollution. It means there's more people getting into the water with unsafe sunscreen, and by unsafe I mean unsafe for the corals and the fish. It means there's more boats out on the water, stirring up the water, scaring away the wildlife. If you've been to a big city, think a city with at least 1 million people, you can feel it, you can see it, you can literally tell that you're in a big polluted city. The air is harder to breathe, and it turns out that this air pollution can actually affect our oceans too. Water quality can be affected when air quality is affected because there's pollutants and chemicals in the air. It goes up, the whole water cycle turns into clouds, and then it gets rained down as acid rain. As acid level rise, species begin to die. And of course, as always, I will leave all my sources linked below if you'd like to do your own research on this. As of 2018, Okinawa had 99% unhealthy reef. Thankfully, there are coral restoration projects in place, but that just isn't enough. And of course, it's not just overtourism that's causing this, but this is a good place to start. Corals and other species dying off isn't just happening here, it's happening throughout the rest of the world too. But what really impacted me and inspired me to make this video is that this is happening real time right where I'm currently living. And that's something that I've learned throughout my entire environmentalism journey, is that when you actually get to see the impacts yourself, that's what really gets to change your mind. I didn't care at all about the reefs when I was living in the rural Midwest, landlocked Ohio. I had ever even seen a reef till I lived here. So it was so hard for me to correlate the impact of me flying or me eating meat or whatever on coral reefs and tropical fish. When you actually live here is when you actually kind of get to see those impacts live in person, and it inspires you to make more changes. At least that's what I feel. I noticed this a lot when I went snorkeling a couple weeks ago. The coral was just very brown and very gray, and it wasn't very lively, and there were very few fish. And now, of course, I might have just not gone snorkeling in a great area, but I have gone snorkeling a few times here in Okinawa, and that's always been the case. But when I was looking at photos of Ishigaki, I noticed a lot of very lively looking coral. It was all very colorful. There were so many fish, and I instantly compared it to what I've seen here. And the sad part is that Okinawa's reefs are not even expected to fully recover. And this isn't just because of overtourism, of course, this is because of larger factors in the environment. For example, the rising average temperature that isn't stopping. Because of rising ocean temperatures, they predict that mass coral bleaching will become the new norm. And not only this, but coral bleaching has actually become worse due to air pollution, water pollution, agricultural runoff, and that sort of stuff. And coral bleaching is an international problem. It might seem silly to someone who doesn't know much about reefs, but I've actually learned a lot, and the reefs are vital to the islands of Okinawa, and that is because each island is actually surrounded by a coral reef, at least most of the islands, and these reefs help protect the islands from typhoons and tsunamis and other types of storms. Of course, they are actual live animals, and they are home to many, many more animals as well. It is actually expected that at this rate, the coral reefs could be completely gone in the next 80 years. So as a whole, overtourism isn't just destroying our coral reefs, but it is actually destroying the entire ecosystem. Again, not just overtourism, everything that has to do with climate change. I've disclaimed that enough. So just add that to everything else I say. I just keep saying that because over-tourism is the focus of this video, so I want to keep that clear. And because I also want to highlight this because more and more people travel every single year, especially they make long-haul flights and travel to these over-touristy destinations. And so that is just contributing to more and more when it comes to climate change. So I want everyone to just be cognizant of their actions. Animals in unnatural habitats, like places where you can ride elephants and pet tigers, lead to unethical treatment of animals and ultimately their death. Of course, there are like animal rehabilitation centers, but you just really have to do your research before visiting one of these places, because it can be really easy to actually give your money to one of these unethical practices. And of course, like, seen Tiger King. It can lead to them breeding animals for unethical reasons, unethically treating those animals, and even pulling animals out of their natural habitat, which could also disturb the entire ecosystem. Roads are replacing forests, resorts are replacing coastlines, and plains are replacing quiet and serene areas. All of this has an effect on the greater environment, but ultimately the animals. They are overrun from their homes, migration patterns are disrupted, and the carbon footprint might be leading to their extinction. In just 50 years, 1/3 of the plants and animals that we know to exist today could be extinct. This has to do with the maximum global temperature average that we can reach before it's irreversible. If we go about 2.9 degrees Celsius, it could be 95% extinction. I bring this up because one island near Ishigaki, it's called Idiomote, it houses a very rare breed of cat. It is the Idiomote wildcat, only known to exist on this island, and there's very, very few of them left. I don't know why they are going extinct, but it got me thinking that climate change could be leading to the extinction of many, many animals, and over-tourism is leading to climate change, so it's all related. It got me thinking that, is this one of the species on this list that's going extinct due to climate change? And of course, I don't really know, but I wanted to explore it anyways and include it in this video. But is over-tourism to this island, the island of Okinawa, contributing to species extinction and coral degradation? Perhaps, but it might be unknown because we're actually in the 6th mass extinction. But what can we do? Is there anything we can actually do as consumers, as tourists, to help these issues? It might seem bleak, it might seem hopeless, but there actually is still things that we can do. It kind of got me asking myself some questions too. How can me choosing not to go to an over-touristy destination prevent coral degradation? And honestly, it might not. Me making that decision on my own might not, but if I make that action and then 10 other people make that action and then 1,000 people make that action not to come to this island, it just really starts to add up and add up. So it really does take group action to see big results. And that's when it gets kind of hard. You can feel kind of powerless when you're just an individual doing something, but that's when education comes in. Sharing this video, speaking about this just with your coworkers, making your own video, making your own post, actually encouraging people and educating people about this topic as well is one of the most powerful things that we can do as individuals. So by you making that action and then inspiring more and more and more people also not to make that action, really does have a big impact. So for example, say you're getting ready to plan your next vacation, you go to a not very well-known area, like Takayama. When we went up there, no one had ever heard of it, and so we explained why. And it was just a great opportunity for me to talk about over-tourism and why I don't want to go to like South Thailand or Seoul or somewhere else that's very, very popular. You know, it's very densely populated in general, and it's also a very popular tourist destination, as well as the impacts of over-tourism. So maybe you'll get presented with a situation like that, and it'll give you a chance to talk about over-tourism as well. Of course, voting with your dollar is another great thing. By showing these little islands that you support what they're doing, conserving coral or using solar electricity or whatever it may be, as well as choosing more eco-friendly modes of transportation, voting for green energy, voting for green companies with your money, really shows them that they have the support and that industries like oil and coal don't have your support. And of course, voting in elections is one of the greatest things that you can do as well. Voting in your national election is great, but don't forget to vote in your local elections as well. By doing so, you give your voice to the entire community, telling them what candidates you do and don't support. By having someone who believes in the environment in a high position of authority really gives us a little bit of hope. I also kind of just think we're doomed. Overall, over-tourism is bad. It's bad for the people, for the animals, for the plants, for the wildlife. Different synonyms can I use? It's bad for air pollution, it's bad for climate change. It's just bad. So in summary, be respectful of the environment of the area that you're traveling in. Don't litter. Choose the most eco-friendly mode of transportation if possible. Once you get there, don't stay in big resorts, and use reef-safe sunscreen. All that sorts of stuff really do help. Even if you are in an over-touristy area, you can still travel those areas more mindfully and with a more eco-friendly conscience. state of mind. So if you can avoid over-tourism, great. I mean, you always have a choice, but I guess if you're really, really dying to go to Venice, but if you really can't give up going to one of those over-touristy destinations, at least once you get there, do your traveling mindfully. That's all I'm asking. And if you can consciously, willfully avoid over-tourism, good on you. I mean, I'm guilty. I've gone to places like Kyoto, which is very over-touristy. Of course, if you missed the first video in this over-tourism mini-series, sure, we'll call it a mini-series, be sure to check it out. I'll leave it linked up there. I'll leave it linked down below, as well as some other of my travel related content. As much as I love to focus on practical sustainability here on this channel, which is making sustainability easy and fun and cheap and all this other stuff, I really also love to travel. So I'd like to focus on sustainable travel on this channel as well. And that's what I'm trying to do. It might seem like your actions are small. It might seem like they're meaningless, but the more you do these actions and then the more you inspire other people to do these actions, the bigger impact it has in the long run. Do what you can, inspire others. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to spend some time with me. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help support my channel. If you found any of this information helpful, interesting, useful, I would really appreciate if you share this video with others to keep spreading this message. I think a lot of this in this community that I'm building here are very like-minded. We already believe over-tourism is bad. We already believe flying is bad. But we need to get this message across to people who still fly frivolously, who still stay in big resorts, who still go to all these over-touristy destinations. Those are the people whose minds we need to be changing. So if you think this video could be beneficial for others, I would really appreciate you taking the time to share it. If you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe. It would really make my day. Like I said, I talk about all sorts of things, environmental sustainability here on this channel. That's all. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, remember that these small changes you make have a big impact in the long run. Bye guys. While the entire chain of Yayama also can fall as chemical rain, not chemical rain, what's it called? Acid rain. Roads are replacing rainforest and regular forests. And airplanes, what are they doing? And planes are replacing. But it's kind of unknown because we are actually in the 6th mass extinction, perhaps. But it might be unknown because we are actually in the 6th mass extinction of our time. 6th. It's just such a weird word. But we need to get this message across to people who still fry.